Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and this is my wrap-up for November. Now the good news is this wrap-up is going to be extremely short. For one, I only read 2 books this month, so it's definitely going to be a quick one. I feel like my wrap-ups have been getting longer and longer. It might be a bit pointless in this video, but I'm still going to add timestamps to the description box, so if you want to skip to either one of the 2 book reviews you'll find in this video, you can do so by opening up the description box and then clicking on the timestamp next to the book you're interested in. Another thing I didn't do this month, and I'm slightly more upset about this than about my reading volume, is I didn't really watch booktube. I spoke about this in a video I did in November called On Finding the Right Balance. Linked up here if you're interested. Since I didn't read or watch booktube this month, it's not hard to guess that I still haven't found that balance, but I'm working on it. And it's not really what this video is about. Again, I feel like I've done so many complainy videos recently. Let's just be positive. So for those of you who like the monthly shoutouts, you will be disappointed in this video because there are none, but there will be a big roundup of small booktubers later this month, in which I will recommend all of the new small booktubers that I've shouted out over the past year. So that's something to look forward to. Let's get straight to the books then. It feels silly to do these statistics for 2 books, but here it goes. In November, I read 2 books with an average rating of 3.5 stars. The first book I finished, which was also my last Victober read, and that was the audiobook edition of Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens, and this is read by Simon Vance. This was the very first time I've ever read a Dickens novel, and I'm really glad that I liked it as much as I did. Going into this, I had no idea what this book was about beyond can Orphan Boy please have some more? I hadn't even seen the musical or any other adaptation of this, so I was surprised as I got more into the book that it doesn't seem to be much about Oliver Twist, despite the title of this. And that's probably fine because Oliver is quite a bland character, really. He's a sensitive child who's not suited at all for the horrible situations that he's thrown into in the course of the book, and he spends most of his screen time being a bit timid and generally good-hearted and morally sound. The poor boy grows up as an orphan in a workhouse, only to end up being sold, well, essentially sold, to an undertaker. He escapes from there and ends up in London, where he accidentally joins a group of pickpockets and other criminals. He doesn't really do much, and the plot just sort of happens to him, either driven by other characters or, like many Victorian stories, by fate and circumstance. The other characters really take over the story, and most of the book deals with them and their issues and problems and relationships. Dickens' characterization is really amazing in this. He kind of uses these very stereotypical stock characters that we know from old literature, like the cheeky pickpocket or the tart with a heart, and most problematically, of course, the deceptive Jewish villain. There's always a clear distinction between the good and the evil characters with very little nuance. And yet these characters are written with so much skill and warmth and wit that I still enjoyed reading about them. Downright my favourite is Nancy, who comes closest to being a grey character in this black and white world. She's also one of the most proactive players in this story and moves the plot forwards almost by herself. I loved the chapters that focus on her and found her so intriguing to read about. Her storyline is absolutely heartbreaking, especially the way that her abusive relationship is described. Nancy is definitely the heart of the book and probably the biggest reason why I liked the book so much. Otherwise, this is a very typical 19th century narrative of fate and predetermination, of family, class and wealth, and how morality is linked to all of these. You can see some of the plot lines very clearly from the beginning, but again, because it's such a stylistically well-written book, that didn't really bother me. The wit of the style and the funny aspects of some of the characters were a surprise to me, because I thought that Charles Dickens would generally be a lot more miserable, a lot more dark, and a lot more serious than it actually was. I also really enjoyed Simon Vance's narration, and I'm glad I ended up reading the audiobook rather than trying to read from this copy, which has got really tiny print, really, really small. I think this is a wonderful introduction to Charles Dickens, and I'm really looking forward to exploring more of his writing. The second and last book I read in November was I See You by Clare Mackintosh. Let's take this off. This is her second crime thriller, and also the second one of hers that I've read. Clare Mackintosh is one of the favourite authors of my friend and guest spinster Robin, and this is also her copy that I borrowed from her. This book follows two main characters. One is a middle-aged woman with 2 adult children and an office job in London. She is on the way home from work one day when she notices her own photograph in the advertisement section of the newspaper. The next day she looks again, and there is a different woman in the same bit. Every day a different woman appears on the same page in the small ads. She then finds out that one of the women who appeared there got murdered. So, fearing for her life and her safety, she contacts the police and ends up investigating the case with the second main character. This is a character called Kelly, who is a police officer with her own problems, both professionally and privately. She takes on the case as part of the investigating team, and as the story continues, of course, there are twists and surprises which I don't want to spoil now. The premise of this is very intriguing to me. The idea that there's someone watching you and taking advantage of your identity and privacy is, as a woman, a mix of completely realistic and absolutely terrifying. The story moves quite slowly, which I really liked, and I also enjoyed both of the main characters' perspectives. We also get little chapters from the perspective of the villain, and of course those are there to build the tension, but also to make you guess who this person is. The whodunit part is really very traditional. Several of the minor characters just act a bit weird, and everyone has got some sort of secret to hide, which makes for a very specific selection of suspects. Clare Mackintosh is very good at twists, and the last part of this book is full of them. I personally did not guess the solution, but then I never do with crime fiction. The thing that stopped me from being fully immersed in the story was the writing style in parts. It's not subtle, and sometimes the villainous monologues cross the line from creepy into accidentally hilariously funny. The points about the commercialization of femininity and exploitation of women are not expressed in an elegant and subtle way, but are quite ham-fisted, really. Overall, though, this was an enjoyable read, and I would recommend it if you enjoy this genre of twist-heavy psychological thrillers, and I gave it 3 stars. Yep, those were the books, and now for the curated bookshelf tally. One of these books is borrowed, and the other one I got secondhand ages ago, but I am going to donate this one because I now have the audiobook, and even if I want to reread a paper copy of this, it's going to be easy enough to find very much anywhere, so I don't feel like I need to hold on to this copy. And that was it for this month. I have already, in the first week of December, read more books than I did all of last month, so the next wrap-up will be quite a bit longer. I don't know if that's good news or bad news, but there it is. Thank you for watching. Bye!